Hi, this is Jesse Colin Young, and you are tuned to RockCellarTV.
RockCellarTV, 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 RockCellarTV.
Well, the first question is, the album is called The Dreamers, and I was curious, going back to, your childhood or just your formative years, what were your early dreams?
I don't know whether I had dreams about being a singer. It took till I was a teenager, I think. I knew I didn't want to be in the Army because there was a lot of standing in line, I think. I don't know how I got that idea as a kid. I thought, I'll never make it through all that standing in line to eat. I knew I wasn't going to be a professional athlete because I was just not good enough at anything. I had a little go at lacrosse, and that was about the thing I was best at, but certainly not enough to make a living. I'd starve to death. What really lit up my childhood was Alan Freed coming on the radio. I was 10, and I was taking piano lessons, and it was the stupid music, and then all of a sudden there was this beautiful doo-wop stuff that he called Moondog in the beginning. And so I had a little shelf by my head where I slept, and I put my radio on, and it stayed on. I turned it down to where my parents couldn't hear it. It stayed on all night, and for years. And I began collecting records and being a DJ at church dances, but really things didn't take off for me until I went away to prep school and they offered classical guitar. And I signed up, and I wasn't playing much classical guitar, but that was, it was a Stella guitar, just with action like this. Yeah. And I got through it, and actually my roommate was taking the same course, and pretty soon we were singing Everly Brothers songs, and it was happening.
When did you realize that music was the thing you wanted to pursue as a vocation?
Well, I don't know. It took a little longer. I think it was actually getting kicked out of prep school for playing the guitar that kind of made me realize I was not going to Harvard like my father. I was going to go to Ohio State and live behind a record store. And I was going to discover T-Bone Walker and B.B. King, and then I would know where to go from there.
Well, getting to the new record, what's the significance for you of the title?
Dreamers. Well, the record's it's a dream come true, and it came out of the blue for me. In 2009, I was diagnosed with Lyme's disease, and I'd probably had it 10 or 20 years before it was diagnosed. So at this point in time, there's no real way to get rid of chronic Lyme. So you just have to treat it and learn to live with it. So I was off the road, no recording. I was, not enough energy even, or any desire to write any songs for, 6 or 7 years there. And I was starting to get better. And my son Tristan was graduating from Berklee College of Music. So Connie and I, his mom, my sweetheart, we went to his senior recital. And they were playing fusion, no vocals. And I sat 12 feet from the stage. I was really loud, but perfect. And I I heard myself singing in the midst of this beautiful music that was coming off the stage with 6 or 7 young men in their 20s. After the show, I asked my son, I said, I want to play. You help me put a band together of all these young men like you and gals or eventually who are so young and can play so beautifully. It knocked me out. And it took me from, like, I thought my career was over to wanting to play again, wanting to tour. And I think 4 shows in, I said, my God, I'm going to record with these young people. I better kick the writing into top gear.
So, using the words Youngblood, how did that Youngblood that was infused into the creation of this record inspire you both as a writer and in the performance and recording of the album?
You know, Connie and I had started writing that spring. Someone had called us. They were the casting director for what became Boston Strong, the movie, and they said, you know, we have this song, but it really sucks. So, do you think Jesse would write a song for the movie? And we said yes. And that was kind of a stretch, but it came at a time when I probably hadn't written a song in 2 years. So the next morning I wake up and Connie has a page of lyrics. She'd gotten up at 5 in the morning, and in 2 days we had a beautiful song, Cast a Stone, the lead song on the record. And I thought, wow, that was so easy. Maybe it's working again. So, I mean, once you start writing, then in the back of your mind, you're thinking, well, who am I going to record with? And where am I going to do it? And is there a way to? And is there a label? So I think my mind was already working. The kids, as I call them, they so brilliant, so young. I really don't tell people who play with me what to play. I want them to play something, and I just tell them when it doesn't work, and then they come up with something else. And that's the way it worked as we developed the songs. There were 2 or 3 of them, like Cast a Stone was already written. There were a couple others, and they became part of the first show. But I was starting to write all along, and we're at a very kind of critical time in the history of our country. A lot of ugly things happening, and it really, I wanted to write about what was going on and what I saw and how I thought we should respond. And doing it, I don't know how, 20-year-olds, I don't know how many generations that is. That's probably 3 generations between me and them, but I think some of them came to music through 60s music, and so we really kind of met in the middle. Everybody felt that it was going to be about love, our love of music, and eventually, as we got to know each other, our love of each other, and the amazing things that we could do together.
Well, in describing the record, I think you were talking about your first record, which was looking forward, but this one is looking backwards, in a sense, right? Do you want to talk a bit about that, what you meant by that?
Did I say that? I think it's looking straight at what's going on in America today, and hoping that people will listen and gather together and try to move in a positive direction. We've been moving in a lot of ugly, negative directions, and it's just, it's not working.
And the power of music, you know, when you started out, and obviously you were a part of that, that social change, and, you know, grabbing onto that cultural zeitgeist, you know, using music as a form of change. Do you think music still has that power to enact change?
I don't know, but here I am. I mean, we spent a year on the road. Then we made a record in Nashville. It's beautiful. You know, in 7 days, a couple of days of overdubbing. I hadn't done that in, I don't know, 20 years. And I kind of lost track where I was going with that.
Well, we were talking about. I did read a quote where you talked about your first album was looking forward, and this was looking back. But then you said actually, it's not really looking back. It's taking a look at what's happening right now and all the problems that are facing us. But then we're speaking about the power of music today. Does it still retain that power to enact change in the culture?
Yeah, I'm praying that music still has that. And part of the reason I wrote the songs was I was waiting to hear somebody writing about what was going on, and I wasn't hearing it. So I think that spurred me on even more to write about my feelings about all of us being immigrants and our country being all the stronger for it. The dreamers. Immigrants are dreamers. And all of them, so I wrote a song called Dreamers that talks about all the different parts of my family that came in different centuries to America, and how don't turn your back on the dreamers. Dreams are, I think, and making them come true are what makes this country what it is and gives it its power. And that's being ruined as we take sides and don't speak to each other. Eventually, that's not going to work. It will weaken us, and already has, I think.
Well, there's a great quote inside the CD. Love is a song we sing. Fear is the way we die. We'll talk about that.
Yeah. So one Sunday, I was walking through the village, Greenwich Village. The Youngbloods were playing at the Cafe Go-Go as an opening act for whomever. And I got to play with people like Bo Diddley and Muddy Waters, a lot of my favorites. And being a Sunday, I thought maybe the Go-Go would be dark. So I walked down this long stairway down into the Go-Go, like 2 flights of, and I got to the bottom. I said, damn, somebody's playing music. And I poked my head in. It was an open mic. And Buzzy Lenhart was there, singing Get Together. I'd never heard it. I had seen him play with Tim Hardin, play vibes with Tim Hardin, and that's the only time I'd ever seen him. And I just rushed back in the dressing room and said, give me the lyrics, please. I'm in love. And I think that day, I mean, I really felt my path open up. I mean, Get Together to me was like a giant neon sign saying, this way, son, this way. So, yes, it has been a torch, it has been a beacon, it has been a teacher, and continues to be. And I think the spirit of Get Together is in that record because we carried it with it. I carried it from my generation, and they carried it having kind of been through the waters of that as they grew into young musicians. So I hope it will help, because we need all the help we can get.
1 second. So you're bringing up Get Together, and it's the 50th anniversary of that song. You know, racing up the charts to number 5. But what a lot of people don't know, unless they really know your history, is that was a single off of the Youngbloods record in 1967, and didn't really do much on the charts at that point. Who was the big champion to resurrect that song? And were you also thinking at the time when this person was resurrecting it, why is he resurrecting an older song?
No. Get Together. Yeah, we Youngbloods played first time Avalon Ballroom June 15th, 1967, the beginning of Summer of Love. And when I walked into my hotel room, we'd never been there, on Geary Street, and turning on the radio, Get Together was there. And it was played incessantly in San Francisco because of what was happening, because the Summer of Love was beginning. But maybe Seattle, Portland, that was it. And we just went ahead. But the head of promotion at RCA was a man named Augie Bloom. And Augie was the best of promotion men in all the best sense of the word. Somebody who would just take your music and fight for it to get it on the air. And he went, and he saw that the country in those 2 years between 67 and 69 that had absorbed some of that beautiful culture that came alive in San Francisco, and some of those feelings about the war. And so he went to the president and said, you know, we need to re-release Get Together. This is the time. And whoever it was said, no, Augie, we don't do that. And Augie said, yes, we will do that, or I will walk out this door. And they couldn't afford to lose him. He was the best. So that's how the record was re-released. His vision of it and the timing of it, yeah, was perfect. And good for the country, good for us, but really, that music fed, it feeds all kinds of things. I remember we lived in Hawaii for a while after a house burned up in California, Connie and I and the kids. And I was doing the laundry once. She was working on building a Waldorf school, and I was on laundry proposal. And I'm down there doing the laundry thinking, Get Together's on the air right now, working for peace and love. I'm doing the laundry. It's good. It's never stopped. And it's so strange and wonderful that in this 50th year, here it comes again. It's as needed as it was in 1967. You know, I sang it in New York in the park this past summer at a free show. This was younger than my normal audience, and there were lots of people on that show. They were not my fans. It was beautiful. I don't know whether there were 6,000, and they sang Get Together. I mean, stronger than I had ever heard it in my life. And I saw some guys going like this, and I thought, what? And it was I realized it was the anniversary of Charlottesville, and they were saying, no, peace and love. So that blew my mind. I mean, it's back. And the desire to say that in the face, that beautiful stuff in the face of the ugliness that is coming at us daily is what it really made my heart beat fast. So I'm available to sing it as long as it's needed, wanted. And the new music, I think it's the best record I probably ever made. Certainly the most political. Maybe I'm just, what's the word? Lyme disease leaves these little holes in your brain. What's that cute expression for someone who learns slowly and matures much later in life? Huh?
Late bloomer.
I'm a late, as it's a beautiful, powerful record, and some of the best writing I've ever done. And Connie and I wrote a couple songs together. I just want people to hear it.
In the 60s, you spent a lot of time playing coffee houses in Boston and Cambridge, but then the Youngbloods moved to Greenwich Village. I was curious, what was the scene like in Greenwich Village at that time, and how do you think what was surrounding you impacted on the type of music and direction you guys were wanting to pursue?
I think it was more folkways. The release, I don't know the name of the man. I mean, maybe I did once upon a time, but who started releasing all this music recorded during the Depression. I heard that he had a little closet, an office the size of a closet in the Brill Building.
Was it Alan Lomax?
Well, I don't think it was Alan Lomax. Alan recorded a lot of that stuff, but I don't think he was, but somebody. And all of a sudden, it was in record stores all over the village, and we were all drinking from that incredible fountain at a time when Elvis was in the rearview mirror. But what did he bring to us? He was listening to the old guys when he was growing up, and because of where he grew up and because of that music was not available in Long Island and where I grew up, but all of a sudden it was. So it kind of supercharged the folk. The interest was there. I was still going to Ohio State, I think, when I asked my father if I could not get a job this next summer, but study the blues. And he was so good, the first man in his family to go to college. And his mother was a nanny, had been a nanny too. She came down from Nova Scotia and fell in love with my grandfather. But she said when her boys were young, my dad and his brother, who was 6 years younger, if those kids I was taking care of are going to Harvard, then my sons are going. And they made it happen. They really didn't have the money. My dad was raising chickens, and everybody was saving money, for him to get in. So this was such a stretch for him, but he did it so gracefully. He said, okay, yeah, don't get a job. So I set myself up in the breezeway and with the record player, and that was the summer I discovered Joan Baez and Muddy, and John Lee Hooker, and so I listened and I played, and then I looked for more songs like Silver Dagger, which had come, and actually I was living across from Trenton, New Jersey, and somehow it was kind of a hick town in New Jersey, a factory town, and so I found Appalachian hymns and things like that recorded that I had never ever heard in my life. It was all new to me. And then a year later, when I was at NYU and living in the village, Folkways came and just opened the doors, and they just kept opening wider and wider. And pretty soon, I was opening for Mississippi John Hurt, you know, and Lightnin' Hopkins, who became, you know, friends, both of them, and mentors, and yeah, what a time.
Amazing. Well, what was the lure that drew you guys out to San Francisco, and how do you think San Francisco, the scene that was happening and the culture that was happening in the city, also impacted on the direction of what the Youngbloods were doing?
Well, like I said, we played one gig in 1967 in June at the Avalon Ballroom, and besides the fact that Get Together was on the radio, you know, instead of 40 people. In New York, we're playing in discotheques. That's all where I remember playing with the, yeah. Youngbloods were never really a dance band. I remember our manager took us to see the Rascals and tried to get our drummer to see the way he spins those drumsticks. And it was not happening. So when we walked out on stage, you know, there were 400 people instead of 40 people, and big clouds of dope smoke were coming out of the audience. It was just so different. And everyone, Banana was kind of unusual because he had a big fro. Every other person in San Francisco's hair looked like that. It was just, and people smiled beyond the drugs and beyond the thrift store clothing. People smiled at you in the street. You know, I was born and raised in New York. People only smile at you in the street when they want money. And so it was, yes, it was like finding a heavenly place to be. And I mean, you couldn't resist that. I don't know who could resist walking into something like that happening.
What were you hearing about when you were in Greenwich Village? What were you hearing about San Francisco and what was happening in the scene that you guys said, okay, that's it, we're getting out of the Big Apple and we're going westward?
No, that was it. We played. We went home. We had a couple tracks to do on Earth Music with Felix Pappalardi, and we finished them, and we packed our stuff. I mean, the minute we played the Avalon Ballroom, and I think in those days you played either 2 or 3 days, you know, in a row. Yeah, it was over for us in New York. We knew where we belonged, and you know, we even decided to move to the country, which was a big. We realized we didn't have to. Drummer's brother lived out in Marin, and we went out there to visit him, and we all fell in love. And so we packed our stuff on the Lower East Side and found houses to rent out there. And I think we were the first long hairs. This was a ranching community, dairy ranching. We were the first long hairs who had jobs that they had ever seen. So it was a weird, wonderful thing to integrate into this little dink kind of cow town and become part of it.
San Francisco was such a fertile music scene, especially in the mid to late '60s, early '70s. Who were the artists that you did see perform? You know, at whether it was the Fillmore or Winterland or Avalon or any of those places that really, when you think back, still left a really indelible print on your consciousness.
David Lindley was in a band called Kaleidoscope. I think that was the name. And they were, I mean, anything that was recorded was being played on the radio in San Francisco. It was amazing. It was so perfect for me. I could turn the radio on and learn something in 3 minutes. Yeah, Lindley's, I think his band had a song on the radio that really gave me the beginning changes of Darkness, Darkness. That modal. Other ones, there were the guy who had Steppenwolf. Before that, I think they were a blues band, and I can't remember the name. But they were wonderful, wonderful. I played with them at the Avalon. And Janice. For all the out-of-tuneness, and because we didn't have the nice digital tuners in those days, and probably too much weed was being smoked and whatever. But just being able to see, to experience, we played with her a couple times at the Avalon, heard that raw power of her. Just see it coming together. Yeah. Oh, who else did I love? You know the song, You Know What I Mean?
Lee Michaels?
Lee Michaels. Oh, man. God, I just got a chill down my legs. He killed me. He had a drummer named Frosty, and it was just Lee playing Hammond organ and Frosty. Whew. Yeah, I loved him.
Fantastic. Now can we get you to play?
Oh, yeah.